Hey guys, tonight we wake up somewhere. No one should ever wake up in the dark, breathless belly of the earth, surrounded by silent stone and a creeping realization that this tomb wasn't sealed by accident. You're not lying in your own bed. You're not in your house. You're in a space meant for the dead, and guess what? You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time down in the comments. I want to see who's up late and who's just really brave. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It's the lack of sound that hits you first. No breeze, no hum of electronics. Not even the distant scuffle of a rat, just the crushing quiet of complete, sealed isolation. You open your eyes, but there's no difference. The dark is thick, absolute. So total it presses against your eyelids like wet velvet. You try to sit up, but your head knocks against something solid just inches above. You can't stretch your arms fully. The air tastes old heavy, like it's been breathed too many times. And you realize, this isn't a room. It's a box, a very small box. Panic flares up before you can even think. You suck in a deep breath, but it barely feels like enough. Your chest tightens. You flail a hand to the side, and it thuds against smooth, close-fitting walls. Wooden, maybe stone. You try again this time, slower, your fingertips trembling. The surface is uneven, textured. It feels carved, and then your nails brush something a seam. You drag your fingers across it. It's not a lid. There's no hinge. Just paneling. And worse still, it's not seamless. No, there's give. Dust trickles in between your fingers as you press harder. You're not buried in a modern coffin. This is rough, ancient craftsmanship, and not exactly escape room certified. There's something primal about this kind of fear. You're not just trapped, you're entombed. Your breathing grows ragged. It sounds so loud in this echo chamber that it startles you. You shift, trying to orient yourself. The space is just wide enough to curl your legs barely. There's fabric beneath you, but it's scratchy, coarse, maybe some kind of ancient linen or jute. Not modern, not recent. And somewhere in the periphery of your mind, a question starts to bloom like mold in a damp corner. Why would you be in a tomb? And not just a tomb, but this one. Carefully sealed, meticulously forgotten. Historically speaking, premature burial was once a very real fear. In 18th and 19th century Europe, some people were so afraid of being buried alive that they requested safety coffins, complete with bells flags or even feeding tubes. But this isn't a Victorian panic box. This is older, much older, and there's no bell here, just your thoughts and the dark. You shuffle a bit, squinting for any light leak. Nothing. Still, your eyes are starting to adjust to, not vision exactly, but shape, texture. You're piecing together the space with touch. The lid above you, the walls around you, even the base beneath. There's a strange groove beneath your shoulder blades, like the box was carved to hold a particular body. And maybe it wasn't yours. The thought makes your skin crawl. You whisper just to test your voice. It comes out hoarse. The walls absorb the sound instantly. You whisper again, louder. Still nothing. No echo. No reply. Which is somehow worse. Historically, many cultures believed tombs were not simply storage spaces for the dead, but portals, places of transformation, or traps. In some Egyptian tombs, for instance, false doors were carved into the walls, not to be opened by human hands, but by spirits passing through. You reach a hand to your right, and sure enough, your fingers brush over what feels like a carved panel. There's a slight indentation, a design, a symbol. You trace it. A circle, a line through it. Maybe a hieroglyph, maybe just a doodle, maybe a warning. But here's the kicker: historians still argue whether these markings were religious decorative or more ominous coded instructions for the dead, or for anyone foolish enough to follow them. And here you are, foolish enough to follow nothing. Another breath. Shallower now. Your body's telling you the air is thinning, even if your mind's still scrambling for denial. You wiggle your toes. Movement's still possible. Good sign. You raise your knees, shifting the pressure in the cramped space, and suddenly there's a dull, hollow thunk. You freeze. That wasn't part of the structure. It sounded loose, and that's the moment your mind starts racing, not just with panic, but with possibility. You're in a tomb, yes. But maybe, just maybe, this wasn't meant to be a permanent stay. Or worse, maybe it was. You press your hand down again. That hollow thunk is coming from beneath the coarse fabric you're lying on. Carefully, because there's no room for anything but careful, you lift one hip and begin peeling away the layer under you. It's stiff, brittle with age and tears, with a sound that's far too loud in the choking silence. Your fingers close around the edge of something hard. It's a plank of wood, slightly raised, almost like a lid. You shift again, contorting your arms awkwardly, and give it a push. It moves, just a little, but enough. There's space beneath it. Of course there is, because this wasn't a coffin at all. It's a sarcophagus, and underneath a cache chamber. You feel around the rim, hesitant. What exactly are you hoping for? A ladder, a neon exit sign? No. But instinct drives you. You find a handhold and pull. The panel gives with a creak that feels way too fresh for something that might be centuries old. When you finally lift it, the scent that hits you is indescribable. It's not rot. Rot is something your brain can classify. This is dust oil, something metallic, something ritual. Your stomach twists, but you're already committed. You slide your legs into the opening and lower yourself inch by inch, dangling into God knows what. Your bare feet touch something solid, cool, slightly textured. And you're standing. You made it out of the box. Now you're in the rest of the tomb. Congratulations, sort of. You stretch up and push the panel back into place above you. Not because you want to, but because something deep inside says don't leave it open. Tombs, after all, are meant to stay shut. You inhale again, carefully. The air here is different. Cooler, but still stale. But there's room. You can raise your arms, bend your back, almost stand fully. The chamber you're in now isn't tall, but it feels enormous after the coffin. You shuffle forward, arms, outstretched fingertips, brushing stone walls that seem just slightly damp. Maybe that's sweat. Probably that's sweat. And then your left hand skims something rough, grooved, familiar. Scratch marks, deep ones. You freeze. Your fingers trace them slowly. They start low near the floor and rake upward ragged, desperate arcs. Something tried to claw its way out. No, someone did, and it didn't make it. The lines are old. No dust sits inside them. They were made before the tomb sealed tight, before the air turned stale. That should make you feel better, but somehow it doesn't. You take another step and immediately hit something with your shin. Hard. You gasp, then reach down to identify the culprit. A skull. You jerk backward, stumbling onto your backside. Okay, deep breath. Don't scream. Screaming helps no one, and you're alone. Probably. Now you reach forward again, this time slower, more respectfully. It's not just a skull. It's a full skeleton folded awkwardly into a corner niche. The bones are jumbled like someone tried to cram them in last minute. Not laid out in ceremonial style. No gold mask. No neatly crossed arms. Whoever this was, they weren't meant to be here. Or maybe like you, they weren't meant to wake up. Throughout history, the concept of being buried alive has terrified humanity. In ancient Rome, Vestal virgins who broke their vows weren't executed publicly. They were buried in a sealed room with a small loaf of bread and a lamp. Technically not executed, since the state never touched them. Just buried. With style. Quirky, definitely. Comforting, not even a little. You lean forward, inspecting the bones closer, and notice something odd. There's a ring on one of the skeletal fingers. It's shaped like a serpent, coiled into a circle, its tail in its mouth. The Ouroboros, symbol of eternity, rebirth, or in some interpretations being trapped in a never-ending cycle. You hesitate then because why not? At this point you slide it off the bony hand and onto your own. It's cold. It fits disturbingly well. Some historians argue whether burial rings like these were tokens of status or magical safeguards meant to protect the dead from the journey ahead. Or more creepily, to bind them to the place. You flex your fingers. The ring catches no light. There is no light, but somehow it still feels like it's pulsing. Or maybe that's just your heartbeat. You shuffle forward one cautious step at a time, arms spread wide, probing the chamber. Your right hand bumps into something smooth plaster, maybe. Your left into something fibrous. You grip it. It's rope. No, not rope hair. You yank your hand back, instantly, heart thudding. But morbid curiosity gets the better of you. You reach out again, more delicately this time, and feel a braided plait. Human hair. Still soft. Still attached to something. Okay, deep breath. Tombs often contained mummies. That's not new. But you weren't supposed to meet them, and certainly not brush their hair. You take a step backward, and your heel lands on something. It crumbles underfoot. You crouch and feel the remain. Pottery. A broken funerary jar, likely once holding offerings. Food oil, maybe a few sacred herbs. Ancient Egyptians, for instance, would pack tombs with bread, honey, and beer for the soul's journey. Practical. Hospitable. Except the contents of this one, still faintly sticky. Still wet. Still recent. You lower yourself to the floor, knees creaking against stone, and bring the broken jar closer. It's shattered, but the base is mostly intact, decorated with hand-painted glyphs and a faded image of what might be a stylized jackal. Anubis, maybe. The guardian of the dead. But that's not what makes your stomach twist. No, what gets you is the scent. It's not the thick musk of long-decayed herbs or the dry crumble of incense ash. It's sharp, tangy, sweet. The way syrup turns when left in a warm cupboard too long. Your fingers brush the inside of the jar and come away sticky. You can't help but sniff it, because of course you do, and instantly recoil. It smells fresh, not fresh like a modern grocery aisle. Fresh like it shouldn't be down here. Fresh like someone or something opened this jar after it was sealed in and didn't clean up after themselves. Your heart sinks. You're not the first to wake up here, and apparently not the first to get hungry. You slowly stand and turn toward the source of the broken jar, hoping to find more answers. But instead, your foot kicks something round. It rolls, then clinks faintly against stone. You bend and retrieve it. It's a small amulet, scarab-shaped, carved in dark blue faience. Still cool to the touch. Now this is familiar. Scarabs were practically ancient Egypt's version of good luck charms. Buried with the dead, to ensure rebirth and safe passage. Some were inscribed with prayers, others with the names of pharaohs, and a few with spells. Protection, warnings, curses. You peer closely. The underside has markings, but they're not hieroglyphs you recognize. Are they real? Are they gibberish? Historians still argue whether many of these scarabs were mass-produced spiritual souvenirs, or personalized potent talismans designed to carry specific meanings. What's more concerning is that this one. It's warm now, or maybe your hand's just shaking that much. You pocket it anyway, because sure, what's a little cursed jewelry between tomb mates? You move deeper into the chamber, if you can call it that. The space is still small, still low, but the ceiling here curves inward like a dome. You feel along the walls. No doors, no seams. But something shifts under your foot, another offering. You crouch again. It's a platter. Metal. Dented and rusted, but intact. And on it, pieces of food. You don't want to know what kind. Dried, shriveled, but not completely fossilized. More recent than it should be. And then it clicks. You weren't buried with ancient funerary goods. You were buried with recreations of ancient funerary goods. As if someone was trying to mimic the traditions, but didn't quite get the details right. Suddenly everything here feels off. Too much like a prop set. Too intentional. It's not just an old tomb, it's a curated one. For you, somewhere between horror and confusion, a new idea dawns. This might not even be a tomb from the past. This could be a tomb made in the present, made to feel ancient, made to function the same way with offerings, amulets, and riddles, but made recently. And if that's true, then someone or something is studying you. The air grows colder as the thought sinks in. You rub your arms and your fingers skim something low on your right. A basket. No, a bundle wrapped in linen. You peel it open gently. It's a mummified bird, a falcon. Still intact, still bandaged, still staring. In ancient Egypt, mummified animals were common. Falcons especially were sacred to Horus god, of kingship and the sky. Some tombs contained dozens offerings or pets, or even spiritual companions for the journey to the afterlife. Cute, right, except this one still smells faintly of resin, as if embalmed very recently. Historians debate whether all animal mummies were ceremonial, or if some had deeper, darker meanings, like anchoring a soul to the tomb. Binding something here. Guarding it. You place it down carefully, respectfully, and then something shifts behind you. Not a sound, not a breath, but a shift. The kind your instincts notice before your ears or eyes catch up. You whirl around. Nothing. No shadow. No shape. But that doesn't make you feel better. You hold your breath. A beat. Two. And then there it is again. A faint click. Stone against stone. You press your hands to the wall where you heard it. One of the carvings feels slightly recessed. You push. It moves. A small panel slides open, and a draft flows out, cold, fresh, blessedly breathable. You press your face to the opening, greedily sucking in air that smells of wet earth and greenery. There's a passage beyond. You don't think, you just go. You squeeze through the opening, the stone catching at your clothes, your skin. You emerge into a narrow tunnel, carved rock, uneven floor, a ceiling so low you have to crouch. But there's movement now. Space. Possibility. You crawl forward, one hand outstretched, and the other clutching the scarab amulet like a lifeline. Behind you, the tomb groans. Not literally, of course. Probably. The tunnel breathes around you, or at least it feels that way. Damp, uneven stone presses in from both sides, and your knees scrape across ancient grit as you crawl. Each movement sends tiny echoes ricocheting down the shaft, like whispers that haven't figured out what language to use yet. You pause to listen. Nothing. Still, you get the sense that something is listening to you. The passage isn't long, but it drags. Time here feels twisted. When you finally reach a bend, it opens not into light. Don't get your hopes up, but into a broader chamber. Your hands meet smooth tile. You step in carefully. And now things get strange. The floor is laid in black and white squares. Geometric, deliberate modern. Not tomb modern. Architectural digest modern. The air is cooler here, almost sterile. There's a scent of old incense, and something faintly metallic like rust or blood. You're in another room, clearly part of the same structure, but it shouldn't be part of a tomb. It's too clean, too intentional. The walls here are inscribed again, but not with hieroglyphs. These are different. Angular, etched deeply, and laid out in spiral symbols that don't track with any language you've seen. They glow faintly, and when you blink hard, the glow's gone. You circle the chamber slowly, noting how the carvings start at eye level and curve downward like a visual whirlpool. Your gaze is pulled inward toward the center, where there's a stone slab, not a coffin, not a pedestal, an altar. Upon it lies a mask. Gold, ornate. Familiar in style, but wrong in detail. The mouth is twisted upward in a grin far too wide. The eyes aren't just hollow, they're recessed, as if meant to funnel something inward. It's ceremonial, that much is obvious. But for who? You edge closer. There's an inscription beneath the mask, etched into the altar's face. You run your fingers along the grooves, feeling for familiar shapes. But again, it's not Egyptian, not Sumerian, not Greek. It's some sort of hybrid. Like someone copied pieces of different burial cultures and mashed them into one. A remixed tomb. Fringe scholars have long speculated about synthetic burial sites, hidden locations, where powerful cults or wealthy eccentrics recreated death rituals from multiple civilizations, hoping to hedge their bets on the afterlife. You always thought that was nonsense, but here you are, living in it, or not quite living. You back away, slowly. You need to focus, need to escape. You look for another tunnel, another door, but there's only one exit. It's through the wall, A doorway shaped like an arch, half collapsed, but passable, barely. You squeeze through sideways one shoulder at a time, the stone flaking against your arms. The next passage is narrower than the first, but the air feels warmer. It's going up now. You can smell dirt, damp roots, something alive. Encouraging, mostly. As you climb hand over hand, the walls narrow again. Not carved, but packed earth. Less ancient, more. Freshly disturbed. You think of catacombs, of secret chambers carved beneath mansions or monasteries. You also think of burial by mistake, people interred during plagues, their bodies dumped en masse. Or those whispered legends about taphophobes building massive puzzle box tombs as both a punishment and a test. If the dead could return, they'd have to earn it. And maybe that's what this is. One of those stories made real. Historians still argue whether certain burial structures in Central Asia were designed to keep things in, or simply to disorient grave robbers and deter spiritual interference. You murmur aloud, more to hear a voice than anything else. Your own voice sounds foreign here. Hushed, like the tomb doesn't like being talked about. Halfway through the passage, something crunches under your knee. You reach down and lift a coin. It's not modern, but it's not ancient either. It's a replica mass-produced museum gift shop style. A gold-plated imitation of a Roman denarius stamped with the face of a long-forgotten emperor. It reads Pax in Terra, Vita post mortem, peace on earth, life after death. You laugh softly. You've fallen into someone's elaborate historical escape room. A prank, a test, a ritual. Something layered, curated, and absurdly dangerous. You pocket the coin, souvenir. At the top of the earthen incline, the walls finally break open into a circular chamber, and this one is unmistakably a ritual space. The floor is inscribed with a massive spiral drawn in chalk and something darker. In the center sits a bowl. Not ancient, plastic, like something from a kitchen drawer, but inside it, ash, feather fragments, and one small, still-beating beetle, a scarab. You freeze. It's the same size, the same color. The same glossy blue as the one you found earlier, still pocketed, still warm. You pull it out. Hold it next to the living one. They hum in unison, not literally. You don't hear anything. But they vibrate like magnets near each other. You step forward without meaning to, and the moment your foot touches the spiral, the beetle in the bowl stops moving, just like that. And the tunnel behind you collapses. You don't scream, you don't even breathe. Just stand there. Frozen. Scarab clenched tight in one hand, the other still outstretched in mid-step. Behind you, the passage is gone. Sealed off in a waterfall of soil and dust. No door, no draft, just packed earth. As if it was never there. Like the tomb is saying, you go forward now. You step back from the spiral, slowly. The bowl remains the tiny corpse of the scarab, inside unmoving wings still glistening with a trace of life. Yours still warm, still pulsing. You don't know if that's reassuring or a countdown. You skirt around the edge of the spiral, careful not to disturb the markings. They might just be chalk, but they feel like more. Even with your modern brain insisting there's no such thing as magic, your instincts are screaming, don't step in it again. The far wall holds something, new markings, yes, but also words, in English. Barely legible beneath grime, scrawled in an uneven hand. The body was mine, but the death wasn't. You stare at it mouth dry. Someone else was here. Not centuries ago, but recently. Recently enough to write in chalk. Maybe they got out. Maybe they didn't. Either way, it's more proof this tomb isn't ancient in the way you thought. It's newer, but built deliberately to look old, to feel old. Which might be worse, honestly. It means someone built this someone alive, and meant for someone else to wake up inside it. Meaning you're not in a historical accident. You're in a trap, and you're not even sure if the goal was to kill you, or keep you alive for something. You move toward the writing. There's more faint beneath it. Indents carved into the wall, not just written. It looks like a calendar, but not a modern one. Circular, lunar, marked with symbols. You recognize a few phases of the moon, astrological glyphs, ancient numerals. all surrounding a central sigil. A triangle with 3 eyes. You've definitely never seen that in any museum exhibit. There's a circle around it labeled Opening. A smaller one labeled Return. The lines connecting them are uneven, like someone was guessing. Or desperate. You press your hand to the sigil, half expecting something to happen. Maybe a secret door. Maybe the floor opens. Maybe you finally just die. Nothing. But your scarab. It vibrates again. Sharper this time. You pull it out, hold it close to the symbol, and it clicks. Not like it's unlocking anything. More like it's matching. A fit. A key to the shape. You set it down in the center of the triangle. The moment it touches the stone, the wall directly behind it shifts. Slowly. Painfully. A seam you didn't notice slides open, revealing a narrow stairway leading down. Of course it leads down. Why would anything in a tomb go up? You take a deep breath. The passage smells different again. Not earthy this time. Metallic. Cold. Like a basement freezer. You descend. Each step is worn smooth at the center, as if dozens, hundreds of feet have gone this way before. Which is comforting, until you realize those people never came back this way. The chamber below is lit. Lit. No torches. No natural light. Just a dull, sourceless glow that feels like it's coming from the walls themselves. Faint enough not to hurt your eyes. Bright enough to show what's waiting. And what's waiting is a room that looks exactly like your bedroom. Almost. The bed's the same shape. The sheets are the same color. There's a stack of your favorite books on the floor. A half-empty water bottle. Even the same hoodie you thought you lost last year, draped over the chair. But it's wrong. The air's too still. There's no dust. Everything smells like it was cleaned minutes ago. Like someone was expecting you. You move forward slowly, heartbeat pounding in your ears toward the nightstand. There's a phone charging. Your phone. You pick it up, screen still on. One notification. Welcome back. You swipe. The screen stays black. Then faintly in the reflection you see your face, pale, drawn, but familiar. And behind it, eyes. Not yours. Painted on the wall. The same eyes you saw in the tomb above, drawn wide, watching. The ones that followed you. They're here now, too, watching you sleep in a room meant to comfort you. A room that knows you. There's a mirror next to the bed. You step in front of it. Your reflection blinks. You don't. You stagger back, knocking over the chair. And when you look again, the mirror is empty. Just wall. No more reflection. No more you. You sit hard on the bed, breathing fast. This isn't escape. This is another layer. This isn't your room. It's a copy. The tomb wasn't a mistake. The burial wasn't accidental. You weren't the wrong person. You were chosen. You lie back on the bed, Sua. Not because it feels safe, but because your legs decide they're done. The mattress is too soft. The blanket's too warm. All of it too welcoming. Like a hotel room with that eerie perfection where nothing has been touched, yet somehow it's customized just for you. You stare up at the ceiling. It's black, not painted. Black void. Black, a darkness that absorbs the light from the glowing walls like it's drinking it. You blink, and shapes ripple faintly above you. Swirls, lines, stars, or something trying very hard to pretend it understands what stars look like. You sit up fast, heartbeat clanging in your throat. You need to move. You need to break the illusion before it starts feeling normal. Because that's the danger, right? If the tomb can make itself into a copy of your room, your comfort zone, then it can make you forget where you actually are. You start pacing, dragging your fingers along the walls, looking for cracks in the set. A curtain, a seam, anything. And that's when you see them again. Eyes, painted, carved, scratched everywhere. The corners, the floorboards, the ceiling. Dozens, maybe hundreds of stylized human eyes. Some wide, some closed, some mid-blink, but all positioned to stare at you, watching, judging, waiting. In ancient funerary art, eyes were more than decoration. They were spiritual portals. The Ujjat, or Eye of Horus, wasn't just a protection symbol. It was active surveillance, a cosmic camera, meant to watch over the dead and report back to the gods. Some tombs even featured false doors painted with elaborate eyes, so the soul of the deceased could peek into the living world. You turn suddenly aware of just how many eyes you've passed already. What if you're not being watched? What if you're being studied? You grab a book from the stack. It's your favorite novel, the one you always reread during long nights. You flip it open. The pages are blank, every single one. You open another book, same thing. And the water bottle filled but not with water. The liquid is too thick, a little golden, a little red. You drop it instantly. This isn't your room. This is your memory of it. A poor copy made by something that only knows what you felt in the room, not what was really in it. You reach for the mirror again. This time there is a reflection, but it's not you. It's a version of you. Same face, same hoodie, but standing too still. The eyes are wrong. The pupils are slits. The head tilts just slightly, reptilian. You turn. Nothing's behind you. You turn back. The mirror is empty again. You sit shaking. It's not just the visuals. It's the intent. Someone or something built this place to manipulate human perception. Not just a tomb. A machine. And then you hear it. A slow grinding sound deep below your feet. Like gears turning. Like something waking up. Your instinct kicks in. You drop to the floor and press your ear to the boards. Beneath the fake bedroom, there's movement, shifting stone, hissing pipes, maybe even voices, low, muted, non-human. You crawl to the corner, tearing up the rug, and there it is, a trapdoor. You wrench it open and descend without hesitation. Not because it feels safe, but because staying in that mimic bedroom feels worse. The ladder is cold metal, industrial, definitely not ancient. You climb down into a chamber that finally drops the act. No carved symbols, no glowing glyphs, just stone, raw, ugly, honest. This is the real tomb. And the first thing you notice, rows of bodies. Not skeletons, not mummies, people. Lying in carved alcoves. Preserved, but not decayed. Some are wearing modern clothes. One has AirPods still in. Another is gripping a Polaroid. You scan their faces. Peaceful. Too peaceful. Drugged, frozen, stored. At the end of the row is a console. Not digital, not quite mechanical, something in between. A hybrid of ancient tech and modern design. Levers, symbols, one glowing button that pulses like a heartbeat. You move toward it slowly. A voice whispers behind you. Not a real one, not aloud. You weren't the first. You spin. The room's still empty, but the console is pulsing faster. You glance at one of the sleeping bodies. It's you, but wearing something different, slightly older. You move to the next, also you. You run the row. Every one of them, a variation of your face. Your form, a little older, a little younger. This tomb wasn't made for you. It was made to collect you, or at least all your versions. You look back at the console. The pulsing button now glows red. It knows you've noticed. Historians still argue whether certain tomb complexes were actually designed for ritualized cloning or spiritual fragmentation, separating a person's identity across bodies or timelines to preserve aspects of the soul. You always thought that was ridiculous. You don't anymore, because the last body in the row opens its eyes. You stumble back instinctively, your heel catching on the cold edge of the trap door you'd just climbed through. The body, your body, the one in the alcove, doesn't move. Not at first. Just keeps its eyes open, blinking slowly, mechanically, as though waking from a sleep that wasn't entirely restful or natural. Then without sitting up, it smiles. You freeze, because that's your smile. Not one you've ever practiced in the mirror, but the weird crooked one you do when you're trying not to laugh at something inappropriate. The one no one else is supposed to know about. The not you figure closes its eyes again. Is that it? No. Because another one of the bodies, 3 alcoves down, starts to twitch. Then another. A cascade, slow but steady. Fingers flexing, toes curling, eyelids fluttering. You feel like you're watching a rehearsal for your own funeral, except the cast list is entirely you. You bolt for the far end of the chamber, the echoes of your footfalls racing you there. The console you'd seen earlier, the hybrid of ancient engineering and something smarter than human, is now active. Lines of light pulse through the stone walls like veins. It hums with power. or purpose. Atop the console, another mirror. You glance in, and this time you see something strange. Your face, yes, but different. You're dressed in linen, your skin dusted with ochre, your head shaved, your eyes lined with black coal. Ancient Egypt. But you blink and the scene changes. Now you're a Roman soldier, armor glinting. Then a monk with ink-stained fingers. Then a woman in a powdered wig holding a fan. Another blink. Another version. Another fragment of a life you've never lived, but also somehow did. Each one stares back at you for a moment too long, as if trying to say, "Remember me." Historians still argue whether ancient beliefs in reincarnation were metaphorical or literal. Some argue they encoded knowledge about generational memory, epigenetic trauma, or even quantum entanglement. Others point to structures like this one as physical manifestations of those beliefs. Not shrines to the dead, but repositories of consciousness. You run your hands along the console. There are hieroglyphs here, yes, but also Braille, Morse code, binary, ancient Akkadian cuneiform baked right beside silicon chips. It's as if every era contributed to this place like one long conversation across time. You find a lever. You pause. It might open something. It might end something. You pull. Nothing explodes, but the room responds. A soft wind, no source, just movement. Then a low chime, notes from an instrument no one's invented yet, echoing in a rhythm that's almost familiar, like the theme song to a dream you forgot when you woke up. The wall behind the bodies begins to shift. Not slide, not open, just morph. A hallway softly lit unfurls before you, organic like the ribcage of a giant fossil. You step through it, and the air changes immediately, cooler, charged like a server farm, humming with silent electricity. Every few steps you pass display niches. Some hold scrolls, others tablets. One displays what looks like a petrified heart still faintly beating in a suspended field of light. You pass a floating orb flickering with projected images of Earth, except the continents are subtly wrong. As if it's not quite our version. Maybe this place doesn't belong to one Earth. Maybe it's a convergence point. That would explain why every ancient civilization had tombs, burial chambers, sacred spaces underground. What if they weren't burying their dead? What if they were uploading them? You stop in front of another mirror. This time it doesn't show you. It shows someone else. A man. Young. Wearing modern clothes. And you realize he's watching you. Not just in the mirror. Through it. You wave. He waves back. And that's when you feel the final click, like the last tumbler of a lock falling into place. You are not the visitor here. You are the subject. This entire journey, it's been triggered before. By others. Probably by him. Maybe by all your past lives or variants or whatever they are. This place isn't a tomb. It's a lab. You look back down this hallway, and standing in your path is one of the versions of yourself from the sleeping alcoves. She or you holds a small box. Ornate, mechanical, covered in symbols. She offers it silently. You hesitate, but you take it, because if this place is trying to preserve you, or maybe even complete you, then this box is the final piece. It clicks open. Inside is a tooth. Your tooth. You recognize the chip in the enamel from when you fell off your bike in 3rd grade. But how did it get here? And why does holding it make you feel whole? You hear the hallway behind you seal shut. No going back. Not that you planned to. You tuck the box under your arm and press forward into the final chamber. And what waits there? Well, let's just say the ceiling isn't black anymore. It's a sky, but not the one you remember. It isn't a sky made of stars. It's a dome of moving memories, millions of them swirling in slow celestial arcs. Images, moments, fragments. A child blowing out candles on a cake shaped like a dinosaur. A soldier shielding a dog during a dust storm. An old woman planting a tree in what looks like a crater. Some are yours, but most aren't. Or maybe they will be. You walk forward cautiously, the floor shifting subtly under your steps, like it's adapting to your gait. At the center of the chamber, a platform rises, a slow and soundless elevator made of polished obsidian, its surface as smooth as calm water. No buttons, no handrails, just an invitation. You step on. The lift begins its silent ascent into the memory sky, and as you rise, you feel the air becoming lighter. Not thinner, lighter like it's charged with ideas. Hopes, regrets, thoughts that were once private now pulsing gently around you, in shimmering little whirls of light. Some whisper in languages long lost to living tongues. Others feel like songs, or smells or déjà vu so intense it catches in your throat. Historians still argue whether places like this ever really existed, or if they were metaphors, hidden in myth illusion and architecture. The labyrinth of Knossos, the catacombs of Paris, the hidden libraries of Timbuktu. Some say they were only allegories for inner journeys for the mind's descent into itself. But maybe some were real. Maybe one still is. Above you, now suspended in the center of the dome, is a second you. Except this one isn't flesh. It's a luminous outline. Almost holographic, but textured somehow. It breathes. It waits like a twin who arrived long before you did. And it's holding out its hand. So you take it. The moment you do everything shifts. You see time not as a line, but as a spiral. You see every version of yourself across every era, every choice. You see what would have happened if you had taken that other job. If you hadn't sent that text. If you hadn't climbed up through the trap door in the tomb. In this view, nothing is lost. Every timeline spins glittering and valid. The idea that you were buried alive. That someone made a mistake. No, this was the plan all along. You weren't trapped in a tomb. You were stored, protected, preserved for when the world or worlds would need you again. The figure beside you dissolves into light and streams into your chest. You stagger overwhelmed but steady yourself. You're still you, but more. You feel an unlocking deep in your chest like a vault door slowly creaking open. Behind it, not treasure, just clarity. All those strange sensations, the moments of déjà vu, the names that felt familiar for no reason, they weren't mistakes. They were echoes. You're not the first to wake in this place, but you might be the first to understand why. You glance around the chamber one last time. The sky of memories begins to dim. Not fading, just softening like it knows you've seen enough. The lift lowers gently. When your feet touch stone again, the hallway behind you reappears. But it's no longer alien. You walk back through the box, still in your arms, though lighter now, almost empty. Or maybe it just feels that way because you've taken its contents into yourself. As you re-enter the original chamber, the one with the sleeping selves, you realize they're all gone. The alcoves are empty. The other versions of you are no longer lying in stone recesses. They've left. Gone where exactly? You're not sure. But somehow you're okay with that. Because you're next. One final corridor awaits. You can feel it hum behind the wall like a lung drawing breath. It's been waiting too. You reach out. The stone vanishes under your hand, replaced by cool air and starlight. Not a dome this time, but the real sky. Or at least, a sky. You step out into it, and for the first time in what feels like centuries or seconds, you breathe. Deep, full, whole. The desert is quiet around you. A few stars blink overhead. Somewhere in the distance, something chirps, like a mechanical owl or a real one in a very digital disguise. You glance back, half expecting the passage to vanish, to seal you out forever. But it remains, just in case, because this isn't the end of a nightmare. It's the beginning of whatever comes next. You take a step forward, then another, and the sands begin to shift beneath your feet gently, like they remember you. Welcome back. Let the imagery soften now, like sand settling in a quiet hourglass. The shadows of that hidden chamber fade into the hush of the evening, the pulse of ancient memories retreating gently into silence. The air cools around you, steady and safe, carrying away the weight of the mystery you've just passed through. Your heartbeat slows. The room around you, the real one where you're lying now, feels a little lighter, maybe a little warmer. You're not in a tomb anymore. You're exactly where you're meant to be. There's nothing left to solve tonight. No more trap doors or strange mirrors. Just the stillness, the softness, the breath in your lungs, and the quiet rhythm of sleep waiting just beyond your lashes. You made it. You're home. And now, you can rest. Sweet dreams. Hey guys, tonight we journey into a bizarre corner of human history. One where hunger status, superstition, and some truly unhinged taste buds combined to create food pairings so strange you might actually gag in your dreams. You're seated at a Roman banquet now. The air smells of honey and vinegar, sweat, and incense. A servant walks by balancing a silver platter, and on it a roasted dormouse, stuffed, glazed, drenched in fermented fish sauce. You probably won't survive this, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know where and when in the world you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lick your lips, pretending to look curious instead of queasy. The Romans called this delicacy gliers, or fattened dormice. These tiny woodland creatures, force-fed and raised in specialized ceramic jars called gliraria, were prized by Roman elites not just for the flavor, but for the flex. Plump little bodies roasted with spices, herbs, and honey, often presented whole, intact, with the tiny paws still curled. You don't ask questions, you just eat. But the real kicker, garum. You remember that bottle of fermented fish sauce your friend brought back from Vietnam? Multiply its funk by 10, boil it under a Mediterranean sun, and you get Roman garum, made from the guts of anchovies or mackerel left to rot with salt in clay vats. The resulting liquid gold was strained bottled and poured over everything, including your dessert. Historians still argue whether garum was a high-class condiment or an everyday staple, but the recipes suggest both. Rich or poor if you were Roman, your taste buds were marinated in umami long before the Japanese coined the word. Tonight, though, you're at the table of a wealthy patrician. The air thickens as a second dish arrives. It's fruit figs stuffed with pine nuts. You breathe easier. Finally something normal. But then comes the drizzle. More garum. Always garum. Sweet meets salty meats, whatever garum is. It's not subtle. It's not delicate. It's a culinary punch in the face. And still somehow people loved it. You reach for wine. Bad idea. Roman wine is often cut with seawater herbs, or even crushed marble to tame its bitterness. Sometimes it's boiled into a syrup called defrutum, then reduced further into sapa, which naturally also goes into your next course, boiled octopus soaked in honey and vinegar, served with a side of rose petals and sow's udder. Yes, that's udder. The part that made milk. Cooked until tender, then carved into strips and skewered with oysters. You shift in your seat, overwhelmed. How did anyone enjoy this? But enjoyment wasn't always the point. Food in ancient Rome was about class, spectacle, and tradition. Exotic pairings showed you had money access and daring. You weren't just eating, you were performing. Even poor Romans experimented wildly. Grains were mixed with salted fish and cheap dates to make portable energy bars. Garum could hide the taste of rotten meat, so it kept things economical. And somewhere between the amphorae of vinegar and the grilled flamingo tongues, a pattern emerges. The Romans weren't chasing flavor. They were chasing sensation, contrast, power, surprise. There's even a recipe in Apicius, the ancient Roman cookbook for boiled ostrich with mint, dates, honey, cumin. And you guessed it, garum. The same book suggests serving sea urchin guts with vinegar and mustard. That tingling down your spine, totally valid. But not all these combinations were real. Some scholars argue that the most extravagant ones, like jellyfish in wine sauce, were recorded for shock value, not dinner parties. Satirists like Juvenal loved mocking the gluttony of the upper class. So whether those peacock brain pies were eaten or merely imagined, no one really knows. Still, the dormouse is real. The garum is very real. And if you were a guest at a Roman feast, there was no opting out. You ate what you were given, or you risked offending the host, the gods, and probably a few ghosts. And now your host claps his hands. Slaves clear the plates. The wine is refilled this time, warmed with cloves and saffron. You lean back only slightly terrified of what's next. But hey, you survived the mouse. You don't get much time to recover. The room shifts again, candles flicker, and the marble fades beneath your feet. You blink and suddenly the cold hits your cheeks. You're in medieval England now, seated on a rough wooden bench beside a hearth that's spitting more smoke than heat. A woman ladles something from a bubbling pot into a bowl. You peer inside. It's porridge. Gray, lumpy, harmless. But then she hands you the topping. It's eel. Porridge and eel. Not stewed eel on porridge. No, it's in the porridge. Chopped boiled bone in and sludging around with oats and onions. You stare into the bowl like it just blinked back. Yes, it's weird, but to them it's Wednesday. Eel was practically a staple for medieval Brits, especially during Lent, when meat was banned. Eel wasn't meat technically, it was fish. Kind of. Sort of. Close enough to slip past religious restrictions. Monks raised eels in ditches. Peasants caught them in traps. Rich folks baked them in pies with spices and cream. But everyone ate them. Even children. Even you now. You scoop a bite and the texture fights you. The oats are slimy. The eel is chewy, and there's a faint taste of the riverbank it was dragged from. You chew bravely. Good job. Historians still argue whether this dish was a desperate invention or a beloved regional tradition. Some claim it was peasant food. Others say eel was a status symbol since the church owned the rivers and taxed every slippery bite. Either way, porridge wasn't just breakfast. It was breakfast, lunch, and dinner, just with different bits thrown in. Still chewing, you notice another bowl arriving. This one is sweeter. Creamy. It smells pleasant until you spot the garnish. Roasted duck beaks. They're perched like little trophies around the rim, blackened and glossy, like they've been shellacked. The dish. A custard-like dessert called blancmange. Rice almond milk shredded chicken. Yes, chicken, cooked down to a smooth paste, then molded into towers and dyed with saffron or beetroot. It's like rice pudding that forgot its own identity. Blancmange was a feast dish. Nobles adored it. They even sculpted it into castles or swans, sometimes coating it in gold leaf. But the version you're served is humbler, with just a bit of poultry left in, to remind you this used to be dinner. Why duck beaks? That's the garnish. For flair, for texture, for nightmares. You glance around the dim room, trying not to make eye contact with the beaks. Somewhere in the rafters, a cat yawns. The woman smiles kindly and sets down a third bowl. It's a pottage, basically medieval stew, but it smells different. Is that fruit? Indeed. You're served a concoction of beef prunes and vinegar, boiled together until it resembles dark brown jam, with shreds of meat glistening like threads of gelatin. The flavor, tart, sweet, meaty, confused. You're confused, and you're still chewing eel, and duck, and what might be a rogue oat from the last bowl. At this point, your stomach has questions, but your host is beaming. Because this is luxury. Spices were expensive. Imported, hoarded, flaunted. Mixing fruit into meat dishes wasn't just fashionable. It was expected. It showed refinement, wealth, the ability to waste sugar on something that wasn't dessert. One recipe recorded in a 15th century English cookbook calls for capons, a type of chicken stewed with sugar, raisins, pine nuts, and wine, then thickened with breadcrumbs. It sounds like trail mix that took a wrong turn into a soup. Historians still debate how these sweet meat hybrids were received. Were they comfort food, exotic flexes, or just attempts to mask the smell of gamey half-fresh meat? Hard to say. But one thing's clear. Medieval palates were into surprise. There's even record of an illusion feast where pies burst open to release live birds, frogs, or musicians. Because nothing says fine dining like dodging pigeons mid-course. You wipe your mouth. The beaks are watching. Outside, the night is long and cold. But inside, your host pulls out one last delicacy ale. Cloudy. Warm, brewed with groot, an herbal blend, that includes yarrow bog myrtle and juniper. Tastes like beer and a hedge had a baby. But compared to eel porridge, it's practically a milkshake. You raise your mug. It's not great, but you made it. And somewhere in the swirling smoke, you swear you hear a dormouse giggle. By the time the last sip of bog myrtle ale trickles down your throat, you're praying for something. Anything normal. Maybe bread, cheese, a sad little apple. But the room around you warps again, and this time the air thickens with spice and heat. You're in an ancient Roman triclinium, reclining awkwardly on a sloped couch that makes digestion feel like a trust exercise with gravity. Across the table, a nobleman nods toward a servant. The platter arrives steaming. What's in it? Well, it's dormouse. Stuffed. Yes, dormouse. A crunchy little tree dweller, beloved not for its charm or acrobatics, but for how nicely it fits inside a clay pot. The Romans didn't just eat dormice, they pampered them. Special terracotta jars called gliraria were designed to fatten them in captivity, feeding them walnuts, acorns, even chestnuts soaked in wine. Tonight's dormouse is roasted whole, rolled in honey and poppy seeds, and stuffed with minced pork and herbs. You stare at it. It stares back. You nibble the edge. It's crispy, a little nutty, somehow not terrible. Historians still argue whether this was daily fare for the elite, or more of a banquet novelty. Some scrolls list dormice alongside anchovies and figs as typical appetizers, while others imply it was a flex like serving gold-leafed shrimp on Instagram today. Either way, it's a far cry from Caesar salad. You reach for water, but your host stops you. Too bland, he says. Instead, he hands you a goblet of posca, a popular Roman drink made from watered-down vinegar, often with herbs and a dash of honey. Think off-brand Gatorade with identity issues. The tartness slaps your tongue, but honestly it clears the dormouse funk faster than expected. And just when you think things can't get weirder, the main course arrives: garum braised fish guts. Garum. The Roman answer to ketchup, soy sauce, and nightmares all at once. It's a fermented fish sauce made by layering small fish, sometimes just the entrails, with salt, and leaving them to rot under the Mediterranean sun. For months, the resulting liquid was strained and bottled like perfume. Romans put it on everything: bread, fruit, wine, even desserts. The fish guts in front of you have been slow cooked with leeks and garum. The aroma hits first. It's pungent, like low tide and anchovy breath had an argument in your nose. You chew. It's salty, savory, somehow luxurious. If you squint your taste buds, it almost resembles modern umami. Garum's just like Worcestershire sauce, someone insists. That someone has clearly never fermented sardines on their windowsill. Quirkier still is the dessert. You're served boiled ostrich egg halved and topped with sweetened peppercorn syrup. Yes, peppercorns. Romans loved the balance of sweet and spicy. They sweetened lentils, peppered plums, and even served cheesecake with a splash of garum. Some surviving recipes include milk custards with pine nuts, and brace yourself, fish sauce drizzle. Historians still puzzle over whether the combination of sweet and fishy was a taste quirk or simply poor flavor boundaries. Some say Roman cuisine was about bold contrast. Others suspect the sauces masked the age of ingredients. Whatever the reason, your palate is now permanently haunted by the words anchovy pudding. And yet, there's logic behind the madness. Romans believed that food was medicine. Hot foods balanced cold humors. Sweet calmed bile. Garum. It was practically a panacea. Athletes drank it. Doctors prescribed it. Lovers whispered about it. You lie back against your couch, the curve of the triclinium pressing awkwardly into your ribs. The dormouse has settled. The garum, less so. A servant passes with a bowl of pickled jellyfish. You do not make eye contact. Instead, you pretend to nap. If anyone asks, you're deep in philosophical thought about how Romans conquered half the known world on a diet of fish sauce vinegar and small rodents. Respect. You're not entirely sure how, but you've ended up in 16th century Japan, and the first thing you notice is the quiet. There's no clatter of forks, no loud toasts, just the soft rustle of kimono silk and the distant drip of water from a bamboo fountain. You kneel politely, ankles aching already at a lacquered table. A tray is placed in front of you, with serene reverence. On it raw squid, cut paper thin, wrapped delicately around fermented soybeans, natto. If you've never encountered natto before, congratulations. That slippery, stringy, ammonia-scented bean goo is something you need to build trust with. It clings like cobwebs, smells like an armpit, moves like it's sentient, and it was considered breakfast. Here, though, the squid adds a chewy chill. The pairing is textural chaos, but it works somehow. You slurp it down because that's polite, and also because the chef is watching with quiet, murderous pride. You make an approving sound. He bows. You live another day. This combination wasn't weird by Edo period standards. Natto was a staple beloved for its health benefits. High-protein probiotic and supposedly good for stamina. The squid. An elegant contrast. Historians still argue whether this pairing came from culinary innovation or desperate preservation methods in humid climates. Either way, it's unforgettable. But the next course challenges everything you think you know about dessert. Enter katsuobushi candy. Dried, fermented, smoked skipjack. Tuna shavings, yes, the kind that dance on your ramen, compressed into sugar lozenges. Sweet fish candy. Imagine if beef jerky and Jolly Ranchers had an awkward child and sent it to boarding school in Kyoto. Katsuobushi itself is already strange. It's practically mummified fish shaved so finely it levitates in heat. But pairing it with sugar. That was part of a broader Japanese principle, umami harmony. Sweet and savory weren't enemies, they were co-conspirators. These candies were gifted, cherished, even sold by apothecaries as digestion aids. You let one melt on your tongue and try not to cry. Next up, grilled eel basted in a sauce of soy sugar and ground charcoal. Yes, charcoal, not just for fuel, but as flavor. In Edo, Japan, certain regions used edible charcoal dust in sauces to add depth and medicinal value. Some recipes even included powdered deer antler or dried wasp larvae. You're thankful tonight's meal skipped the bugs. Probably. Historians still puzzle over whether this charcoal twist was intentional culinary wisdom or accidental innovation. Some say it balanced flavor and preserved meat. Others suggest it just looked dramatic against white rice. Either way, your teeth now feel like they've licked a campfire. But the eel divine. And then, as if summoned by your growing dread, comes the final shock tofu, soaked in blood. Okay, not actual blood, but it sure looks like it. This is yuba tofu skin, marinated in red sake lees, the leftovers from sake brewing. The result is silky burgundy tofu, with a sharp fermented tang, like cheese meeting wine in an alleyway. It's weird, it's bold, and it pairs weirdly well with roasted chestnuts. You sip warm green tea and try to look grateful. One of the monks at the neighboring table is happily chewing something that looks suspiciously like moss. Maybe it is moss. Throughout all this, you notice the precision, the respect for ingredients. Even the strangest combos here have intention balance and quiet reverence. There's no screaming over sauces, no excess, just centuries of deeply ritualized flavor philosophy. You remember the Roman garum and its chaotic vibe. Japan's weird foods. They whisper. They let you meditate on every bite, even if that bite happens to be dried, fish candy soaked in sugar, and existential doubt. A final bowl of miso soup arrives. Inside tofu scallions and one floating chrysanthemum petal. You slurp, you bow, you survive. The scene shifts again, and suddenly you're in Victorian England, surrounded by the clatter of silverware and the murmur of genteel conversation. But don't let the lace and top hats fool you. This is the era of culinary experiments that would make even the bravest modern foodie blink. Imagine sitting down to a banquet where the main attraction is a pie filled with oysters and custard. Yes, oysters and custard, mingling in one pastry crust, the cold creaminess of the custard wrapping around the briny, chewy shellfish. It's baffling to say the least, but it was considered a delicacy, a dish worthy of aristocrats. Historians still debate whether Victorian palates were more adventurous or just desperately in need of novelty in a time of industrial monotony. Next up, you're offered a slice of mock turtle soup, a broth made not from turtles, but from calves' heads, pickled and simmered to imitate the prized reptilian flavor. The idea was less about taste and more about social signaling. Turtles were expensive and rare, so clever cooks found workarounds that let them pretend to dine on the exotic. You try it. It's surprisingly rich and gelatinous, the kind of dish that clings to your ribs but also raises your eyebrows. Then there's the infamous jellied eels, a London street food where chopped eels are boiled until tender and set into a savory jelly. You lift a wobbling portion with a fork, watching the translucent blob jiggle before it hits your tongue. It's slippery fishy and oddly comforting if you're from East London, but might send anyone else sprinting. The Victorian obsession with gelatin is both a health craze and a practical way to preserve food before refrigeration. But historians still argue whether this was culinary brilliance or just the height of bizarre. You also get a taste of cucumber and mint jelly, a delicate sweet gelatin that was served alongside roast meats or even dessert. The idea of fruiting jellies mingling with savory courses feels alien, but it was standard fare. Victorian cooks loved texture contrasts, so expect your tongue to dance between soft, crunchy, cold, and wobbly sensations. Quirky, right, but it shows the era's experimental spirit, and you can't help but admire the ambition. For something truly wild, you try the chocolate and garlic pairing. Chocolate was just becoming popular in England, and some daring souls combined it with roasted garlic to shock their guests' taste buds. The sweet bitterness of chocolate, battling the pungent warmth of garlic, creates an intense, almost theatrical experience. Few dared this combo, but recipes did exist showing that even then weird food mashups had their moment. Finally, you finish with a pea and vinegar ice cream, a dessert that is cold, tangy, and slightly vegetal, far from the creamy sweetness you expect from ice cream today. It was a palate cleanser meant to refresh between heavy courses, but most guests left it untouched, bewildered by the greenish hue and sour punch. Some believe this was the precursor to modern savory ice creams, while others say it was a Victorian culinary prank. The overall feeling Victorian dining was a complex social game wrapped in layers of strange textures and flavor experiments. The weirdness wasn't just about shock value. It was about status science, and sometimes sheer necessity. If you survived this meal, you earned serious foodie bragging rights. The culinary time machine now spins you into the Ming Dynasty China, where the concept of unusual food combinations takes on a whole different kind of artistry and cultural significance. You find yourself in a bustling imperial kitchen, the air fragrant with exotic spices and simmering broths. Here, the blending of sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and umami flavors is not just accepted but celebrated often in combinations that might seem bewildering to your modern palate. One classic dish on offer is the famous sweet and sour pork, but imagine this as a pioneering example of fusion centuries before the term existed. The pork is crispy and tender, coated with a glossy sauce made from vinegar sugar and fermented ingredients that dance on your tongue. But it's not just the balance of sweet and sour. It's the texture contrast, the crunchy exterior giving way to succulent meat inside that makes it memorable. Historians still argue whether this dish originated in imperial kitchens or was a folk creation that migrated upward. But either way, it's a perfect example of flavor harmony in weird food combinations. You're then presented with lotus root, stuffed with glutinous rice steamed until sticky and fragrant, a textural combo that surprises your senses. The crunch of the lotus root with the softness of the rice creates a dual sensation, unusual but oddly satisfying. The Chinese have long treasured the symbolic meanings behind their ingredients, too. the lotus representing purity and rebirth, which adds layers to this culinary experience. Next comes the adventurous bird's nest soup, made from the hardened saliva nests of swiftlets. It's gelatinous, delicate, and considered a luxury for its rarity and supposed health benefits. The texture is uncanny, almost like eating shimmering clouds, and it's mixed with rock sugar or broth, depending on the occasion. You marvel at how something so strange is treasured, showing that weird doesn't always mean unpleasant. Scholars still debate whether the health claims were grounded in early medical science or clever marketing by resourceful cooks. Then there's the legendary pairing of tofu and stinky fermented black beans. On paper, it sounds like a recipe for disaster. But the creamy mildness of tofu perfectly balances the punchy funk of fermented beans. This marriage of mild and strong flavors is a cornerstone of Chinese cuisine's embrace of bold contrasts. You take a bite and taste centuries of culture preservation techniques and flavor experimentation all at once. For a quirky side note, you encounter sweetened winter melon jelly served cold as a refreshing treat during the hot summers. The idea of turning a vegetable into a sweet jelly is unusual by modern Western standards. But here, it's an ingenious way to enjoy seasonal produce. Historians still argue whether these jellies were purely culinary or had roots in traditional medicine aiming to balance the body's heat and cold. Finally, you try a bowl of rice wine and chrysanthemum petals, a floral, mildly intoxicating concoction, served at banquets to aid digestion and celebrate the changing seasons. The blending of alcohol with flowers might sound eccentric, but it encapsulates the elegance and sophistication of Ming dining rituals. By the end of this section, you realize that in Ming China, weird food combinations are not just about shock. They're about balanced symbolism and harmony between ingredients and senses. The weirdness is artful, intentional, and deeply rooted in culture. The scene shifts again, and now you find yourself in the late Victorian era, a time when culinary experimentation was fueled by industrial advances and expanding global trade. You walk into a grand dining room filled with finely dressed guests, the air thick with anticipation, and a hint of confusion over what might appear on their plates. The Victorians had a taste for the exotic and the unusual sometimes, with results that make you cringe and chuckle at the same time. Here you encounter peanut butter and bacon sandwiches, an odd combination that seems downright modern, yet it was quite the craze in some Victorian circles. The salty, smoky bacon contrasts with the creamy, nutty peanut butter in a way that is surprisingly addictive. This pairing challenges your notions of what a sandwich should be, highlighting the Victorian willingness to push culinary boundaries. Historians still argue whether this was a widespread fad or just an eccentric novelty among the upper classes. Then there's the infamous lobster ice cream, which was, as you might guess, not an easy sell. This strange treat blended the sweetness and creaminess of ice cream with chunks of lobster meat, creating a bizarre, sweet-savory fusion that puzzled and intrigued diners. The idea of seafood in dessert feels like a dare, but Victorian chefs loved to shock with their creations. You can almost hear the polite gasps and tentative bites from the guests at a Victorian dinner party. You next face aspic with fruit, a gelatinous dish that trapped pieces of fruit in a savory jelly made from meat stock. This dish was popular in grand banquets and was supposed to be visually impressive as well as tasty, though the combination of sweet fruit suspended in a savory gel still feels disconcerting to you. Aspic was a culinary status symbol showcasing the chef's skill in molding food into artistic shapes. Some food historians still debate whether the fruit was intended to balance flavors or was simply a decorative flourish. On the quirkier side, Victorian ladies often enjoyed jelly with fish, a dish that's exactly what it sounds like, fish suspended in gelatin. The weirdness here isn't just the combo, but the cultural acceptance of gelatin as a showstopper in cuisine, a far cry from the simple jellies we know today. This also leads you to ponder the use of gelat, historically derived from boiling animal parts, a process that might be a little too visceral for modern appetites. You also learn about calf's head cheese, a cold meat jelly made from the head of a calf mixed with vinegar and spices. It was sliced thin and served cold, often with a tangy sauce. The idea of eating the head parts can be off-putting, but the Victorians embraced nose-to-tail eating long before it became trendy. You remember how historians still argue whether this dish was born out of frugality or culinary curiosity. For a whimsical twist, you discover chocolate with chili, which, while popular today, had Victorian origins too. The spicy heat combined with the rich sweetness was considered both exotic and sophisticated, appealing to adventurous palates seeking new sensations. Finally, the pièce de résistance roast swan, sometimes served with unexpected fruit sauces. Swans were a symbol of aristocratic opulence, and pairing their rich meat with tart fruits like cherries or rhubarb was both delicious and visually striking. You reflect on how the Victorians balanced reverence for tradition with a hunger for novelty, making their weird food combos a fascinating window into their culture. Sliding forward into the 20th century, you land in the bustling kitchens of America during the 1950s and 60s, where food science and convenience collided with daring creativity, sometimes with results that make you question humanity's taste buds. You can almost hear the faint hum of refrigerators and the clatter of Tupperware lids as you step into a world eager to try anything once. Here you meet peanut butter and pickle sandwiches, a combo that might make you pause mid-bite. The creamy, salty peanut butter paired with the tangy crunch of pickles is a flavor shocker, but surprisingly popular among kids and some adventurous adults. It's a reminder that sometimes the weirdest combos come from everyday kitchen improvisations. Food historians still argue whether this started as a budget-friendly snack or a genuine flavor innovation. Then there's cottage cheese with ketchup, a marriage that sounds suspiciously like a dare. The bland, lumpy curds meet the sweet, tangy tomato sauce in an odd texture, and taste mashup that divides opinions. You can imagine grandmothers and teenagers both quietly cringing and daring to love it. This combo also shines a light on post-war America's embrace of convenience foods and how they shaped culinary trends. The era also gave rise to the infamous Jell-O salad, a dish that's more science experiment than salad. Imagine wobbly gelatin loaded with bits of fruit vegetables and sometimes even savory ingredients like chopped eggs or olives. The vivid colors and jiggly texture made it a party centerpiece, though modern palates often find it unsettling. Historians still argue whether these salads were meant to impress guests or simply make use of new food technologies. You can't skip Spam and pineapple, a pairing that screams mid-century tropical fantasy. The salty processed meat paired with sweet juicy pineapple slices was a common canned food hack popular in Hawaii and beyond. This combo highlights the fusion of convenience, cultural influence, and sweet savory flavor play that characterized the time. Then there's peanut butter and bacon, which, as you might recall from Victorian times, enjoyed a revival here. The crunchy, smoky bacon with creamy peanut butter once again challenges what a sandwich should be. You chuckle at how some tastes are timelessly weird. Chocolate-covered bacon also appears on your plate, a decadent and divisive treat combining sweet, salty, and smoky notes. It teeters on the edge of culinary brilliance and madness, much like its Victorian predecessor. One of the more peculiar combinations is olive and banana, which sounds like a science fair project, but actually found fans who loved the contrast of salty olives and sweet banana slices. You wonder if it was ever served at a polite dinner party, or just late-night snack experiments. Finally, you discover ice cream with soy sauce, a combination popularized more recently, but with roots in experimental food circles of the mid-20th century. The salty umami kick cuts through the sweetness of the ice cream, creating an unexpected balance. You ponder how this reflects ongoing human curiosity and willingness to explore the boundaries of taste. As you step back from the whirlwind of weird food combos, you see a clear thread. People have always loved pushing culinary boundaries, sometimes out of necessity, sometimes for fun, often with surprising results. Whether it's lobster and ice cream or peanut butter with pickles, these bizarre pairs tell a story about culture innovation and the endless quest for flavor. You're now settling into the fading warmth of the fire, the strange flavors and stories of tonight, slowly dissolving in your mind. Food, that timeless fuel for life, yet sometimes a cause for grimaces throughout history, reminds you softly that life is vast and colorful, not always easy to understand or enjoy. Maybe you laughed, winced, or marveled, but hopefully somewhere in between, you found a spark of fascination in these odd meals of the past. And even though historians still debate many mysteries, these weird food combos remain part of what makes us human. Curious, creative, and occasionally daring. Now you can sigh, relax your shoulders, and let your mind drift gently into the soothing darkness. Sweet dreams.